Call this meeting to order for October the 2nd, 2023. We do have a quorum. The only person we have missing is Commissioner Boswell. Now we'll have the introduction of the agenda and the format of the hearing. Staff?
So I apologize if I missed it. Did you say it was 6:31?
No, I didn't, but I will now.
Thanks.
6:31.
Thank you, Chair. So for each item tonight, we'll have a call to order followed by a staff report. Afterwards, the applicant will make their presentation. Following that, we'll have public comment in support or opposition to the item. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. Following that, Commission and staff will have their discussion. And afterwards, the Commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. The items that are going tonight will have their first consideration at the Monday, October 23rd meeting. We don't have anything that is being removed from the agenda, and on the consent agenda, we have the excusal of absence for Commissioner Kuhn from the September 18th meeting. And then we have 4 new items on new business. We'll have a final plat for Yanni Gardens. We'll have a variance of the lot depth to width ratio for property on Navarre. And we'll have a zone change from neighborhood services to NS for property on Cedar Street. And we'll have a review of the comprehensive plan. With that, I'll pass back to you.
Can I have a motion for the consent agenda in a second?
Excuse me if I can interrupt just a second. I know on the screen it's saying excuse the absences of Commissioner Kuhn. On the actual agenda that was printed out, it says Commissioner Dansby and Commissioner Kuhn.
So as per, you're recommending consent on item A as per the agenda.
I make a motion for approval.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
All right, no discussion? Everybody that's in favor, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 of us. That brings us to new business. Consideration possible action plat 23-108, final plat of Yanni Gardens. Public hearing, a request by James McHoney of Land Point, the applicant, on behalf of Pearland 28 LLC, owner, for approval of the final plat of Yanni Gardens, creating 29 single-family lots and 6 reserves on 11.0001 acres of land located on the west side of Hatfield Road, about 550 feet south of Orange Street. General location, west of Hatfield Road, south of Orange Street. Can I get a motion in a second for approval?
Commissioner Fuertes, motion for approval.
Commissioner Kuhn, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Florence Buaku to make the staff report. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. This request is for the final plat, for approval of the final plat of Yanni Gardens, and is to create 29 lots and 6 reserves. It's zoned single-family residential 2, and the lots are approximately 7,000 square feet. So staff has reviewed it and determined that it is in conformity with the comprehensive plan and thoroughfare plan and all the other required plans within the city. So the zoning map shows the zoning designation of the site, and currently the lot sizes do meet the zoning designation. The future land use is medium density residential, which is consistent with the proposed subdivision. So this is the layout of the final plat. The only thing that has changed between the preliminary plat and the final plat is that what was previously Reserve A has been split into 3 separate reserves. So the preliminary plat had 4 reserves, and the final plat has 6 reserves. Staff has reviewed this based on the criteria in the Unified Development Code for approval of final plats, and has determined that it conforms to the preliminary plat. All the required infrastructure is in place and has been accepted by the city, with exception of a little improvement on the site, which will be done after the approval of the final plat. But apart from that, everything is in place on site, and based on that, staff is recommending approval of the final plat. Thank you, and that concludes staff reports.
Do we have the applicant or his representative here? Okay, seeing no one there, open it up to public. Anybody wishing to speak for or against? Asking a second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against? One last time, asking anyone to speak for and against. All right, hearing none, open it up for commission discussion. Anyone have anything to say?
Something real quick. I don't recall that cul-de-sac in the preliminary plat. Did I miss that?
It's consistent with the preliminary plat. That
Okay.
cul-de-sac was there in the
All right.
preliminary.
Maybe it's my memory. And it's been quite a while. There were some delays with that project. Is there any reason we need to know about?
I know for a while they were working on their lift station. They have that in now. There were some delays with getting that in.
Okay.
But
All right, thank you.
Okay, no more discussion. Call for a vote. All those in favor of approval, raise your right hand. All those opposing, same sign. Approval 6-0. That brings us to number 2 item on the list, consideration possible action. Variance 23-15, variance from the minimum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio in the R1 district. A request by Chris L. Hendricks of Wilson Survey Group, applicant on behalf of Michael and Kelsey Torrey, owners, for approval of a variance permitted in section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, from section 3.2.14.2C to allow the creation of one lot that exceeds the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio described. General location is 3053 Navarre Road, Pearland, Texas. A staff report.
Motion and second.
Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved, Commissioner Dansby.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
Staff report.
Once again, Florence, take it away.
thank you, Martin. And so this request is for a variance from the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio. The property is zoned suburban residential 12. The width of the lot is 133 feet with a lot depth of about 477 feet. And so the lot depth to width ratio is 3.57 to 1 instead of 3-to-1. As stated earlier, the property is zoned suburban residential 12. The intent is to plat this as one lot or single family development, which is consistent with the zoning designation. The property has a future land use designation of medium density residential, which is not consistent with the zoning, but that is the existing future land use designation for the site. And then what we have on the screen is the layout of the plat showing that it's going to be platted as one lot. And it would make dedications towards the future widening of Navarre Road. Staff has reviewed this based on the criteria established in the UDC and has determined that it meets all the requirements for approval of a variance because this lot exists in its current configuration and there's no intent to subdivide this lot. So based on that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed variance. Thank you. That concludes staff report.
Is the applicant present?
The applicant is not present. He did send an email saying he will not be able to make it. He's out of town.
Is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Asking a second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? All right, seeing none, we're going to move it to commission's discussion.
One thing, not really about this parcel in particular, so Lawrence, you might want to keep me legal here. I know I've said a couple of times that it's a recurring for us to have the 3-to-1 lot width lot width ratio. And I'm certainly for staff handling these, and then, perhaps P&Z, a commission, just handling appeals if it's a denial and the applicants wish to appeal. I think it saves staff a lot of time, and I think it'd save us a lot of time. But the preparation you guys go through, I don't think we've denied one of these. So just a thought, and I don't know if that comes with the next UDC. Said enough, and I don't want to.
I was going to suggest, I'm sure staff has taken notes. My guess is that it's going to be part of the next UDC rewrite. We'd expect more comments, and I would just suggest that I want to remember if it was a month or 2 months ago, we probably had one who had an exceedance much larger than this, and normally it's something that makes sense. But the P&Z actually attached a condition to the variance request, and then the biggest concern that was regarding that variance, because of how far back it went, how deep it was emergency access to rear portions of the property, because the building would actually cut off that type of access to the back. And I think that highlighted why you have a variance process. It's just rare that we have to attach a condition.
That was that property off of Soho, behind the
Soho near McCard Road.
Okay, anyone else? Call for a vote. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Everybody opposed, raise back. Same sign. Passes 6-0. That brings us to item 3, consideration possible action for zone change application, zone 23-12. Public hearing, a request by Lisa 2, applicant on behalf of Simplus Grulson, owner, for approval of a zone change for 0.4135 acres of land from Neighborhood Services District to a single family residential R-2 district. General location is 2315 and 2317 Cedar Street, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion to approve?
Commissioner McCatherine, I'll make that motion to approve.
Commissioner Kuhn, I'll second that notion.
Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer to make the staff report. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. As mentioned, the zone change request for you tonight is from the Neighborhood Service District to the Single Family Residential 2 District. And specifically, this is to create 2 single-family detached homes potentially on the 2 lots at 2315 and 2317. And the future land use of the property, as shown, is medium-density residential. And to date, staff has not received any comments in favor or against the request. So as mentioned, the current zoning of the property is neighborhood service, and the properties to the north and the west are currently the single-family residential 2 zoning. And then the properties to the east are the Old Town residential, and then mostly the properties to the south are all general business zoning. And so looking at the future land use surrounding the property, we see a predominantly medium density residential to the north, west, and east. And then to the south is the retail, offices, and services future land use. And so looking a little more at an aerial view of the property as well as the surrounding uses, we get a view of single family detached to the north and the east and the west. And then a self-service auto wash is to the south. And so a little bit of history on this property. The subject property was annexed into the city in 1959. Those 2 properties were platted in 1963 as a part of the Willowcrest Addition, Section 1. And then more recently in 2020, the council voted against the CUP conditional use permit for an assisted living facility on the properties. And since then, the properties have remained undeveloped. And so the following slides are going to be some images of the property from the different roadways. So this would be looking from Cedar Street if we're looking at the front of the properties. And then here's Cherry Street, which is that southern boundary of the property. And this is essentially the side of both of those lots. And lastly, looking from Macawa Road, which would be the eastern property line, we get a view of the rear of the properties. And so looking at some of the review criteria that's staff reviews in terms of zone changes, we see that in terms of the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan, the subject property is designated, as mentioned, as the medium density residential, which is consistent and compatible with the that future land use designation. And then the Macawa Road is a secondary thoroughfare, which is to be widened, and the project is set to get kicked off in the next couple of years. So there may be additional right-of-way that may be needed for that expansion of Macawa. And then looking at the local roads, there's Cherry Street and Cedar Street, which are currently just designated as local streets for the thoroughfare plan. In terms of the Unified Development Code, the property is currently undeveloped, so any future development will be subject to the requirements of the UDC at the time of permitting. And then lastly, the subject properties do have access to city utilities. And looking at the approval criteria for a zone change, staff found that the proposed zone change request met all 4 of the criteria. Specifically looking at the comprehensive plan and the future land use designation, which it's compatible with, as well as some of the surrounding uses, which it's currently single family detached residences to the north, east, and west. And so as mentioned, the proposed request meets the approval criteria, including consistency with the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan, as well as being compatible with the surrounding uses. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed zone change from neighborhood service to single family residential 2. And that concludes staff's report.
Does the applicant have a presentation? Go to the podium and give your name and address, please.
My name is Lisa To. I represent the property owner, Simplest Grillson, and the property address is 2315 and 2317 Cedar Street. And the property is basically like when we looked at the surrounding neighborhoods, we were thinking of initially developing for a duplex, But then upon looking at the requirements, we decided to go with the single-family residential with the R2 medium density requirement. And so the minimum square footage of the homes that we're thinking of is right now at 1,900 square feet, and the maximum is 2,900 square feet. That when you're looking at the lot, the easements and the building, the maximum that could fit is 2,900. So yeah, this is our proposed.
Okay, is that all you got?
Yeah, that's
Okay, well,
yeah.
if we have any questions, we can call you back to the podium.
All right.
That opens it up for any persons wishing to speak for or against this item. Go to the podium, state your name and address. Yeah, we've got a green form out in the area out there. When you get through, please fill it out and give it to Shelby, please.
Yeah, my name is Stacy Wagner. I live at 2310 Paracourt. I just got a question. These two lots, are they going to be actually residential homes? Okay, that's all. I was just wondering I just don't understand on the zone change. What does that mean by NS R2? I guess I don't understand that.
We really can't dialogue with you. We can get that information for you and we'll explain it. Or Lawrence, can you answer that? Just
No, sir, I was just going to suggest, we've heard your question, and the Planning and Zoning Commission may ask staff that question when they get to the discussion item. However, during the public comment portion of the meeting, they are not allowed to dialogue with you.
Okay.
So they can hear your information, and they've done that. And in just a few minutes, I suspect that one of them will ask staff and or the applicant your questions.
The only other question I have is, like, if it's changing the zone, is that going to affect my property taxes or school taxes?
And again, they can't answer your question, sir, but they can hear it, and they may ask that question of staff or the applicant.
So there's nothing really I can do as far as that to just.
no, sir. We're not supposed to dialogue with you. The only thing, you ask your questions, and then once you come down, we open it up for discussion here, and I imagine somebody's going to answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, that moves us to commission's input. Anybody got anything?
To get to your questions here, the first one you asked was, or the statement you made, NS to R2. NS stands for Neighborhood Services. The current zoning of this parcel is NS, Neighborhood Services. And under Neighborhood Services, there's a variety of uses that could go on there by right. For example, a shopping center. But a shopping center would have limited uses within that shopping center because they need to be Neighborhood Services zoned uses as well. So they'd have to fit in that category. When this parcel came prior in 2020, I believe it was, they asked to put an assisted living type facility. I just remembered it as being senior care nursing facility was in my notes. And a lot of people from the community showed up and showed their displeasure. In my opinion, it was a softer use that blended in with residential. So from an NS zoning standpoint, I'd hope that it would be a soft use like that for all the neighbors and to blend in with the neighborhood. It's a unique parcel in its location. The request is now to change the zoning to R2. that blends in with the rest of the neighborhood. If you notice on the diagram up here, there's a blue R2 kind of in the center part of your neighborhood there. That tells you that that entire neighborhood is R2, so this is going to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. So if I'm not sure exactly what house you live in or such, if I lived in your neighborhood, this would give me comfort. Martin, did I handle that question? Okay, you want to add to it? I'm sure you got better.
Commissioner Fortes, I don't know if you're aware, but we do have both a planner and a senior planner position that are open.
You're just saying that so you don't have to deal with me Monday night. You could give me a cubicle in the back and.
I kid. We're all good.
Staff, would this, in your anticipation, create any tax ramifications for the residents in or near this property that you're aware of? Or is there any way to determine that?
So quite honestly, I have no real experience with taxes when it comes to how a single property affects multiple other properties. But I can say that more development does help spread the tax burden out across all of the residents.
But from a lot value, if you own the house next door or 1-3 doors down or across the street, and I'm saying this not as a planning and zoning commissioner, I have a tax protesting license and I'm a real estate broker. The value of those properties across the street with a brand new house will probably lift your values slightly, and I don't think you're going to pay any more property taxes. But I'm saying from a resale standpoint, you have a really nice house across the street rather than an empty lot that people would ask questions. What's going to be there? If you're across the street, you could see over that lot and see the cars on Macawa. Now they're going to be visibly blocked. So.
Sorry, it still holds. We can't dialogue with you.
Sorry. You look familiar.
Anyone else? Okay. Everyone wishing to approve this, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. Carries 6-0. That brings us to item 4, consideration and possible action, comprehensive plan, Pearland 2040. Public hearing, consideration and possible action regarding the adoption of the Pearland 2040 comprehensive plan. And would you just hit the highlights?
So I have our consultants meandering over to help hit those highlights.
Hey, do we need a motion for approval for this, or is this just recommendations or what?
No, sir, it's listed as possible action. So
Okay.
after you hear the presentation tonight, I think you're going to either make recommendations for changes, if that's where you're so inclined to do, or make a recommendation to move forward to approve or recommend City Council approve the comp plan.
Okay.
So to introduce, we have Mike Shelton with Kimley Horn, and then Josie Ortiz, who have been on our consultant staff with Kimley Horn in drafting and helping staff out to get this comprehensive plan drafted and before you here tonight. So I'm going to briefly run through some of the agenda, but this is basically a near verbatim copy of the presentation that we presented to council at the beginning of August, and then let council get through budget season, and then we'll bring or are bringing forward the comprehensive plan for their consideration after y'all make your recommendations. So talking briefly about what the comprehensive plan is, that what the variety of elements are, and then what the comprehensive plan's next steps are. So within the plan, we have a variety of chapters. First, we identify some of the base facts through the community profile. We discuss the direction and some of the strategic priorities that we tried to involve. Next, we go into land use with our new place types, or where we introduce our new place types. Then we get into discussions about infrastructure and public service, housing, economic development, placemaking, thoroughfare planning, mobility, parks, trails, and open space, and then wrapping all of that up with an implementation strategy chapter. So on the comprehensive plan, the plan it comes out of Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 213 and 211, which basically enables the city to go out and plan for its future and plan for its development. We used a set of guiding principles through assets, smart investments, places of value, strong economy, and diverse population, as each of these concepts really help to either ground the subject into a tangible subject of discussion within the chapter, or was something repetitive that we kept hearing through our public engagement. All of those things helped clarify and to bring forward our vision, which was that Pearland is the community of choice, providing its diverse population with a strong economy, balanced by a mix of uses, places of value where people desire to live, work, and play, and making smart investments in existing and future assets. And one thing that we have continued to discuss and that the local government code does a good job of discussing is that comprehensive plan and the future place type map that comes out of the comprehensive plan is not setting zoning. So it is just making recommendations about how those places should be developed in the future and what types of land use decisions we should make as a city to bring forward that vision. Just because I've already read through the vision statement, I'm not going to hit that again. So going through the actual comprehensive plan itself, first couple pages are hitting the executive summary, where we have a letter from the mayor discussing some of the key points of the planning document. And through this, one of the highlights that really jumped out of us was how much land is readily available and how much of it is already in its final state and that is likely not to have a large change. And of that, 24% will likely be in play over the next 20 years, and I believe 10% of it is actually in land that's undeveloped, and that remaining 14% is in land that's underdeveloped, as we've categorized it. So it may have one house on 10 acres, and that land can easily be developed into a full subdivision of property. Mike, were there other points that you wanted to make on that?
I think you covered the important parts of the mayor's letter there, Martin.
Is it something we should comment on as you go, or wait till the end?
Really up to y'all.
Just a small administrative, under Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, second person down, Ashley Boswell is listed as an attorney, and Philip Kaiser is listed as the Planning and Zoning Commissioner. Just let you know,
We will get that fixed. Thank you. So going into the executive summary, the first couple pages really discuss what our public engagement looked like. We had a really amazing tool that Killinghorn staff put together. It let people go through and pick out individual places to make comment on. Of that, we had 7,730 visits to that website from 2,194 unique visitors, and they left 295 comments and 73 survey responses. And if anyone is curious about those comments or questions that were raised, we have those available within the appendix. Right? Yeah. No, good. Yes. So just showing what the public engagement looked like. We went out to each of the Shadow Creek homeowners associations to engage with them. We're engaged with a variety of larger public service groups. And out of that, we get into some of the facts about the community. So with that, we've got a diagram here detailing the ethnic breakdown. We've also got some comparables in between the greater Houston area and the Pearland study area. And one of the key things that staff hammered away at through the development of this plan was to ensure that we've got sources that back up each and every one of these points of data. So that way it's not just the planners making a summary or deriving information from some source and then never having that source available. Each and every one of the points that are discussed in here are either linked back or providing a source at the bottom of the infographic. So as you can see, Pearland is projected to continue to grow, although it is at a slightly slower rate than what we've experienced in between 2000 and 2020. So again, through all of those visioning guiding principles, and in order to get away from land use designations that felt very close and very similar to zoning, staff and our consultant and through the public engagement, we worked on creating types of places. And each one of these places were represented by one of our little Monopoly cards that basically showed what that place type would envision and potentially create should the plan move forward and be recognized and be built in that fashion. Out of that, we recognized 6 catalyst sites, being the Lower Kirby, the Hughes Ranch Stone Road area, the Greater Old Town, Old Massey Ranch area, the 35 and Bailey corridors, and then the Broadway and Cullen intersection. And we went through each one of those areas and asked the community what they envisioned to happen with those areas. Oh, and out of each section, you have recommended actions that come with each one of each chapter. Again, going through public infrastructure and public services, we highlight some of the work that's already been completed with the water and wastewater plans and the master drainage plans, and hit the highlights of how those plans can both work together to create a greater product here within the city. On housing, we did a study recognizing what the median closing prices were in between the city of Pearland and Greater Houston. We've also got some breakdowns on the types of housing that is available within the community. As you can see, we have a greater percentage of single-family detached housing in both Brazoria County, Houston, and on a percentage-wise over the U.S. We also had some discussions on accessory dwelling units, and that's a conversation that has come up a few times with applicants as they bring forward, and it becomes more of a trend that is sought after within the detached single-family market. On economic development, we show a lot of the work that's been carried forward through the Pearland Prosperity Economic Development Plan. And y'all, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, will have a greater purview on that at next Monday's joint meeting with the Economic Development Corporation. Going into placemaking, we really recognize and strive towards opportunities to create a sense of place and to not just design areas where people can work, but also places where people feel like they have a part of the vision into the city, and that it is reflective of not just development, but development specifically to Pearland. And we've got a great picture here of the West Pearland Library, where the city and the community work together to protect an area and the grove of trees back there, and create a place where people can go out there and relax with whatever books they've checked out, and use this as a great example of both placemaking and of an opportunity for people to be inspired through their own developments as they bring forward developments for proposals for development. I realize I am hogging the center stage. So, Josie, why don't you take a discussion on thoroughfares and planning?
Sure. So we took a look at the thoroughfare system, overall mobility as well, and you guys have done a lot of planning in this area as well. So you have a bike ped master plan, I think you call it the multimodal master plan. So we didn't try to reinvent those recommendations. We carried those through, but for the thoroughfare plan, we did recommend an update to your thoroughfare plan, which you guys have partnered with HGAC to update already. So you're ahead of the game. One of the things that we did identify was the potential need for some shared access parking. A lot of driveway cuts happen along the major thoroughfares, and that's just a part of development. Everybody gets their own curb cut, but some of the retrofitting that we're now seeing in thoroughfare planning is combining some of those driveways. It increases safety, decreases some of those access points, but still keeps businesses alive. Or require a UDC policy change. And then, you want to take part? So for parks, trails, and open space, we took an inventory of what you guys currently have, and we looked at national standards. So there is a board for national park standards, and you guys are blowing the nation out of the water in providing parks to your citizens. So again, you have a parks master plan. We didn't try to reinvent the wheel, but we looked at how kind of an updated future land use plan will affect this. So obviously, as you increase density, you'll just want to keep an eye on parks that you're providing. And finally, the implementation strategy. So what was all this planning for? It was to create this implementation strategy. And we identified 3 main strategies based on public feedback, work with the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee and stakeholder groups. And those were to encourage middle market housing, so things like the ADUs that Martin mentioned, just a diversification of the housing stock. Updating the Unified Development Code, one to help address some of the spots where what has changed in the comprehensive plan will require a UDC update. And then finally, focusing on the planned development of the Lower Kirby District. So that's something that we worked with the PEDC to identify. We know that's a big goal for the city of Pearland, and that would be a great catalyst site to start with for some of this work. And so throughout the entire report, we identify recommendations and action items, and then at the very end, We talk about the three here in the body of the report, but every action that is recommended throughout the report is in the appendix with a time frame, who needs to be involved, and then what the action is. And these are snapshots of that. So this is middle market housing, again, updating the UDC, allowing some of that diversification of the housing stock, updating the Unified Development Code. It identifies throughout the plan where an update to the UDC would be required for implementation. And finally, plan development of the Lower Kirby District. So this does also incorporate recommendations from other plans that you guys have undergone at the City of Pearland, making sure it's truly comprehensive.
So I want to say that brings us near to a close on providing a quick update on where we're at with the comprehensive plan and bringing it forward through this public hearing. This is I've said this a few dozen times. This is one step in many, but this is one of the final steps. So, we are bringing this forward for Planning and Zoning's recommendation, and then we'll carry whatever recommendation that is forward on to City Council.
Martin, if I may, just to mention that the Local Government Code, Chapter 213, which we snipped here, defines how a city, a municipality can adopt the code. And this is one of the required steps that's in the actual 213, which is the meeting of, if you have a planning or zoning commission, for them to have a review of the plan. It doesn't require that you approve it or recommend it. It just requires that you do a review, which has been completed.
Okay, is that it? Is that all you got? Okay.
I mean, I can go detail by detail if you'd
No, never mind. Anyone on the commission wishing to speak?
Mr. Eisenberg, it is actually listed as a public hearing. As a public hearing, and we did advertise it. So if you'd make a call for anybody wishing to speak for or against.
Okay. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? Seeing none, that will open it up to commission. Anyone wishing to speak?
I promise I'll be brief, if you believe that. No, first off, I appreciated the opportunity to be on the I think we call it the CPAC. I don't even remember when our first meeting was, but I want to say about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I very much appreciated the process, and Mr. Mike and Ms. Josie, I appreciated all your efforts and your openness to us having comments and tolerating some of mine, all of mine. I did like the input of a lot of our members. I also appreciated when we invited the entire Planning and Zoning Commission, in particular the night where we looked at the future land use plan and all of the draft version with all of the citizens' inputs. And I think that was a moment where I was quite confused in how to say some of these. We don't want some of the things that the public suggested on the future land use plan, because as we saw tonight, and every time we have a zone change, we look at, and the staff looks at, how the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan, how it fits into that, for lack of a better word. And that's part of the decision making that we have to make our decisions on the zoning case. And so the fact that the public put their input, and sometimes it matched what we should or shouldn't be considering, I appreciated the opportunity, and we slowed it down quite a bit to go, even parcel by parcel at times. So I really did appreciate how we went through that. It was a long process. Appreciate y'all staying with it and all the preparations y'all did before each meeting. So thank you. One small question. You all presented this to council. Was there anything that council either objected to or spoke a long time on? Was there any, I always say heartburn, was there anything that they didn't care for particularly?
So one of the issues that got brought up, and I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as full heartburn, but there was additional discussion on it, was about the accessory dwelling units and how the comprehensive plan discusses the availability of that type of development. And really and truly, we saw it as more of a learning opportunity for both staff and for council and the citizenry on that tool already exists within both the Unified Development Code and the current comprehensive plan. It's just not highlighted very well. And having it become a discussion point really offered the opportunity to discuss that this is a type of development that helps people to either create a place for elderly residents, create a place for people with disabilities or people that you're in care of, or to further utilize land that you have available within your ownership. So that way, it's not always rental to someone. It can oftentimes be ownership still within the family, or continued ownership as a single family. So, like I said, not necessarily a moment of heartburn, but a moment of education.
One last little thing. Compact residential was discussed, a term that was new to all of us, as well as missing middle. And since we started the process, there's been multiple, as you could tell, zone change requests that that hit on those, and we as a board even started adopting some of that vernacular, which was pretty neat. I think appreciate the heads up a couple of years ago with that. In particular, BTRs. We had a case last meeting. How does compact residential? How does a BTR fit in with compact residential? And the reason I'm asking is because we have one commissioner that I know says many times, she's very much for, I'm giving away by saying she, my apologies, very much for willing to go compact residential, smaller, tighter lot sizes, but only under ownership. Under rental, she's not so much for it. So just if you could speak to that for just a second, or your thoughts.
Sure. So I'll take first stab at it and then see what Mike and Josie have to add on to. So BTR, as build to rent, is really more a form of ownership than it is a form of development, because you can have build to rent as single family, like we've seen within the Lou Tract of Massey Oaks, where it's very, it is a compact product, but it's built to look and to mimic as a single family residential subdivision. But then you can also have more of a compact with townhomes and duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, those types of things. So again, as build to rent, that's more the ownership and the how the utilities are provided to that land, not necessarily whether it is missing middle or not.
Couldn't agree more. The middle market housing, or missing middle, is the title of the book that we referred to many times during the process. Really, points to the idea that somewhere between what you see very commonly developed here in Pearland and across the state and across the country, from single family detached to large apartment complexes, that there are garden homes, bungalows, triplexes, duplexes, different forms within that. So that missing middle concept is not related to the matrix of ownership. And I think that when you look at the changing demographics and the changing needs of communities like Pearland, and you think about who is currently living here, what the generations as we age out of needing large lot single families to raise our home, to raise our children, but people who want to stay in Pearland and maybe want more of a garden style to allow them to not be responsible for as much yard and not have as much space to take care of. You have that option within the broader ranges that the place types provide you. So it's really changing the future land use plan category where you have a new palette of choices that between the commission, between staff and the development community, they can shape the land uses for a larger range of uses to serve the needs of the population as they change.
Thank you. And that's it. I had something, but I forgot. And at 7:30, some of us turn into pumpkins or something like that. So
Anyone else? Okay, Lawrence, I'm gonna need some help here. Are we supposed to just making a recommendation, or do we take a verbal recommendation, just go down the row and say whether we recommend it to city council or what?
Yes, sir, because it's listed as an action item, not the public hearing, not the local government code, but how it's listed on the agenda. I think that staff has asked for P&Z to make a recommendation, either approving or recommending for approval, I guess would be the better word for it, recommending for approval the comp plan as presented. Or if somebody was so inclined to make proposed amendments.
Okay, so we just start off on one end and each individual will make
You
recommendations.
could actually have a motion to recommend approval and a second and one vote with all of you approving that. And then if somebody didn't want to make a recommendation for approval, it would be on them to make and recommend a amendment at that time.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve?
Commissioner Fuertes, motion to approve.
Commissioner Henrik, second.
All right, no discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 6-0 approved. All right, that moves us to discussion items. City Council update report.
Give me just a moment. Let me switch screens here. So at the September 25th City Council meeting, we had the second and final reading of the zone change for that property at 2510 Roy Road. If y'all remember correctly, this is the property. I will bring up the map so y'all can get a better look. This is that property that is behind the food town. Correct, for the school that is proposed. So this is the property that was seeking to gain approval for general commercial. The second reading was approved with a 4-3 vote because there was some discussion about getting the school back before as a conditional use permit, but it did pass the zone change 4-3. Other than that, I'll pass it back to you. That was the only item that we had.
Okay, that brings us to Commissioner Activity Report.
I have a question. On the plats, So it was brought to my attention that we are now requiring a flood line to be drawn on the plats, like a delineated line. Has that always been the case and I've just missed that, or is this some new rule? Somebody from engineering or planning?
Say, Francisco and John, do you remember how long that's been there?
Since I've been here, at least.
I don't know if that
Never
answers the
seen
question, though.
Physical line on there, so on these
Yeah.
plats.
I want to say for at least I think for a while it's been a requirement, but I can't remember how far back that requirement has been there.
Yeah, so I know that we've always required that a flood zone be listed, but my concern about the line is that it can be misleading because they are basing it off the current FEMA maps, but what if somebody buys the property and all they're looking at is the plat and they're looking at the line? I mean, that line can change over time as FEMA maps change. So do they have to come replat the plat once that occurs?
I understand your concerns, as that is not an actual commissioner activity report. I don't think it's appropriate for the discussion tonight, but I would encourage you to send a letter on over to either community development or engineering outlining that concern instead of waiting until it can come back to you, so that they could start investigating that a little bit further.
Okay.
And making sure that they apply the appropriate standard accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody, commissioner activity report?
I was in a foreign country this last week to the south, and I can tell you I appreciate being back. I appreciate our infrastructure very much and our clean water and not getting sick for 2 days after returning.
Anyone else? First off, who all is going to be attending next week, that